Well, thank you, Congressman, for taking the time. We all greatly appreciate it. Just hopping right in, the government shutdown is now over a week old. We are seeing a big divide between Republicans and Senate Democrats. How did we get here?
Well, that's a great question, Spencer. And I have to say that we're here because the Democrats have decided not to help reopen the government and or keep the government open is the better way to put it. And that's really odd because in the past they've been on exactly the opposite side of the issue, saying how important it was to keep the government open. This time, for whatever reason, they flipped over to the other side. In the House, of course, where I serve, all but two of we Republicans voted to keep the government open, and then all but I think perhaps two of the Democrats or one decided to vote to close the government. And there is nobody that wins when you close the government, period. And I voted for all kinds of continuing resolutions to keep the government open. And there's some really good reasons to do it because playing hardball like the Democrats are doing is damaging a whole bunch of people, and it's not good. It's bad. And so the way you reach resolution of these kinds of things is by getting together, sitting down, talking, and working your way through it. These are all the issues we deal with. They're difficult, but this kind of closing things down so you can get your way, it seldom works well. It's difficult to get out of, and I feel worse for all the people that are being damaged by this, but the military in particular, because when the 15th of this month arrives, they won't get paid. And many of them are on the low end of the income scale, and they'll have to borrow money. They may lose cars because they can't make car payments. This is not a good thing. And so the Democrats, we need seven of them or eight of them in the Senate to vote for the bill. I think three have, and we need obviously five more. And we will be reopened. People will get paid and we can do the appropriate negotiations to address the issues they're concerned about. That's how democracy is supposed to work.
So one of the big things is Obamacare ACA tax credits. That's currently being debated or that's currently being argued over in the Senate. Would you, if a CR came back with a extension for those tax exemptions, would you be willing to vote for that, or would you only vote for a clean CR?
Yeah, well, before we go to what might happen, I just want to say we did pass the clean CR, and that's exactly what the Democrats have always asked for. They got it. They voted against it. They voted to close down the government. Again, I do not know why they want to damage so many people, but to your question, the extension of the tax cuts, or excuse me, the tax credits, is a complex issue. And I know this because in the Oregon legislature, I spent 11 of the 12 years I was there on the tax credit committee. So I understand how they work, and they're complex, and particularly in this space. So if there's going to be an extension, it needs to be carefully worked through. Part of the problem, Spencer, is that much of that money, all of that money goes to insurance companies. And this program has not been handled correctly. It's hugely abused in the sense that many people that have been signed up for these credits don't even know they've been signed up. We can prove this by showing how many people don't go to the doctor because they have no idea they have this insurance. Yet the insurance companies are collecting the money. Some people think this is in the millions of people that don't know they're signed up, yet the government is paying for their their insurance. Something should be done. Also, just another, I could shotgun this issue all day, but let me just say there are people on that program that are making three, four, $500,000. They should not be on that program. They should not be getting those credits.
So what's Republicans' plans to fix healthcare? Because I know it's always been talked about going back to 2016, even when President Trump was running the first time, he said we're going to replace Obamacare with something else. We're now almost a decade past that point, and we haven't seen meaningful change from either side of the aisle. So, do Republicans have a new plan for healthcare?
Yeah, so let me remind your audience that the most important thing is to get the government reopened, and then we can have these complicated, complex debates because the healthcare takes up about 4 trillion of our economy each year. 4 trillion, significantly, almost some people would say twice as much as the next country that's kind of in the Western space. And when you're talking about a $4 trillion issue, you don't just suddenly bark out a solution to how you're going to save money. It requires two things that it requires for sure. One is a really high level of understanding of how it works. And the second is Republicans and Democrats working together as opposed to trying to go it alone. Because if you do go it alone, it won't stick and it won't be done right and it won't be balanced. So, however we do it, it has to be done with Republicans and Democrats putting their shoulder to the wheel and trying to figure this out. And what ends up happening, unfortunately, it's extraordinarily difficult to even talk about reform because you're instantly attacked by the other side saying that you want to do away with it. And that's no way to try to design a healthcare system or any other system. But the first thing we got to do is the Democrats have to vote to reopen the government and get us on down the back into a space where people aren't being hurt every day, and and we can talk about these really, really, really important issues.
Yesterday, we saw conflicting views between President Trump and Speaker Johnson over furloughed workers. President Trump said, in response to asking about furloughed workers, that only some should receive back pay. Mike Johnson said all should receive back pay. Where do you stand on that?
All of them should. That's what the law says.
And then one other thing was we've seen two airports now have shut down, at least temporarily, due to not having enough air traffic controllers. Is there a solution that could be done to make sure that our skies remain open and safe?
Sure, those 5 Democrats need to vote for the clean CR and it would be fixed immediately. I mean, how easy is that? 5 Democrats join the 3 Democrats in the Senate, vote for the clean CR, and guess what? The problem's resolved. By the way, in the big bill that we passed, we included $12.5 billion to address air traffic control issues. That's about a third of what's necessary, but at least it's a step in the right direction. But after 35 days of a shutdown, enough air traffic controllers had called in sick that everybody knew it had to come to an end. So that may be one of the ways that we finally have the Democrats step up and do what they should have done to begin with.
Um, Switching gears a little bit, we're now a little bit over half a week or a week that President Trump announced that troops will be placed in Portland. Part of that was Lori Chavez-DeRemer, current Labor Secretary, asked for in a cabinet meeting a couple months ago. What are your early thoughts on that now that we're about a week in?
So federal troops should only be deployed in states when allowed to do so by the law, excuse me, and to operate within the law. In this case, the source of federal authority is found in 10 USC 12406 sub 3. What that says is the president can call into federal service National Guard troops he thinks necessary to address and keep safe, in this case, the ICE folks trying to carry out the law when it comes to removing people here illegally. And it also says that those folks, the federal folks, can help protect federal property. It seems to me that Judge Immergut, when she issued her restraining order, and by the way, she's a good judge. She really is an excellent judge. But for whatever reason, in this case, she left out some extremely important parts of her opinion. I've read it through 2 or 3 times. And I've also read through the similar opinion down in California. It's called Newsom 2 after Governor Newsom. It was the second case on the issue. And that case actually stayed or stopped the implementation of the restraining order that had been issued by the judge in the same position as Judge Immergut. But Judge Immergut, for whatever reason, left out when she was reciting the fact that local law enforcement could take care of the problem. She left out the fact that Portland City, the Portland Police Bureau, the PPB as it's called, has less than half the number of police that would be normal for a city of Portland's size. Half the number, less actually. And she left out the fact that there's no support for Portland police. Oh, no, no, that's not quite right. There's little support for Portland police at the Portland City Council level, which is really sad. Why didn't she mention that? And part of it has to do with the fact that 1/3 of the Portland City Council are socialists, and they're happy to wear that label. And one of their planks is defund the police. And so that's why they took $14 million away from the Portland Police Bureau over the past number of years. And they took $2 million away just in, I think, May of this year, if you look at their budget from the police. So Judge Immergut, should have included these, uh, what's the right word? Restrictions, the understaffed nature of the police department that she's pointing at as being capable of trying to protect ICE. So of course the president did what he had to do, and that is go get some help for those people to keep them safe. What's happening right now? And I talked to the mayor of Portland at some length about this, and I said, why aren't you having your city police go down and put up barriers and allow ingress and egress to the ICE building to protect getting in and out of it? Because right now, what's happening is protesters are clogging up that space and making it difficult for these people to do their work. Difficult's an understatement. And his answer was, gee, Congressman, because I'm worried that if we take an aggressive position, we won't have the support of the city council, and we will attract the same people that destroyed Portland 5 years ago, Antifa and others. And so why didn't the judge mention that restriction? Because it's certainly obvious. So anyway, I would say right now, we're waiting to see there's going to be arguments tomorrow morning, as I understand it, on the appeal of Judge Immergut's temporary restraining order. So we'll see what the Court of Appeals thinks in California on the appeal. The panel at the Ninth Circuit stayed, or not so much reversed, but stopped the effectiveness of the temporary restraining order down in California. I would expect we'll see. This is a closer call, because down in California, what they were doing was in the thousands of people attacking the ICE folk, and much more damage. We had a lot of damage here, and I think we're in poor Portland is not in a good position to try to defend people within their cities. Kind of sad.
So we also have seen after the injunction, President Trump called up National Guardsmen from other states to be sent to Oregon. Same thing with, I believe it was Texas troops to Chicago. Is there any concern you have of bringing outside troops into other states?
Well, I think part of the reason that he called up the Oregon National Guard first is those people are from Oregon and have an understanding of what's going on, and you hope would exercise an Oregon approach to trying to solve problems. So you don't really want to see other people come in from outside, because they won't have the same care or feelings about fellow Oregonians. So you kind of hate to see the president be driven to do that, but he didn't have much choice after the Judge Immergut, had said he couldn't use Oregon troops. So he turned to other troops, because that was all he had to do. That was his only choice. If you look at her order, had she wanted to block him from doing that, she could have drafted her first order appropriately. She left a gaping hole in it, and that it's no surprise that they took advantage of that lack of detailed work. So as soon as it was called to her attention, they issued what basically it was a second order, but it was an amended order to include all troops. And again, that's going up on appeal.
So do you think it sets a bad precedent? At a certain point, Democrats are going to take over at some point the White House, the House and Senate. Do you think it sets a bad precedent for when that happens?
Which issue are you talking about?
The troops in Portland.
Right. So that's why I started by reciting the law that's being used to justify their deployment. So the law is the law, and if there's nothing changing under the law, if you look carefully at the two memos, one on June 7th and one later, one signed by the president, one signed by the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, they both recite the law that they're relying upon, and the law isn't going to change between now and when and if the Democrats take over.
And switching gears a little bit, looking a little forward. You've obviously been in just dominating the Oregon's second district for or fifth district for a while. Um, second district. Are
Second,
you thinking about re-electing rerun in 2026? Do
I've
you have any
already
concerns about any opposition?
I've already filed, and I think I have three people who filed in opposition, one Republican, two Democrats. So I'm accustomed to running against other folks, and I've successfully run three times previously. This is my fifth year. It's a huge privilege to have this job. It's something I've worked a long time to try to be prepared for in conversations just like the one you and I are having, and I'm happy to be able to read through orders and court opinions and things of that nature with a level of understanding that allows me to discuss this issue with you at this relatively high level. I think that's something that the folks in my district appreciate. It also is extremely valuable to people that I've been here for three generations. I'm the third generation Oregonian, and I've spent an enormous amount of time traveling the district, wearing different hats. First as a member of the Oregon Water Resource Commission for 8 years, and then as a state representative for 10, and as a state senator for 2, and now as a congressman for 5 almost. And so I think people understand the value of that experience.
My last question, is there anything I didn't mention that you'd like to talk about?
Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to reach out and ask me to share my thinking on these important issues. And it's a great opportunity to share complexities that are super important to Oregon, particularly when you think about how different Portland is than Eastern Oregon and my district. My district is little less than three-quarters of the geographic area of the state of Oregon, and none of it touches Portland. And so that makes it being able to understand how Portland works all that more important. I went to law school there for 3 years. My law office had an office, a satellite office in Portland for a number of years. I'm familiar with the city. I am so sad at what has happened to it. It is just a travesty what Antifa and others have done to that beautiful city. And the city council in Portland needs to work a lot harder at repairing its image. You know, on the East Coast, I got to tell you, it's although Portland is repairing itself slowly, you wouldn't know it if you talk to people on the East Coast. Their vision of Portland is of 2020 when it was on fire, and that's very, very, very sad.
Amazing.